Hey, hi everyone. So welcome to this Bootstrap Jamstack talk. I've been meaning to talk about this subject for a while now, so I'm happy to do it. So for people who don't know me, I'm François Lantier-Nadeau. You can call me Frank. I'm the CEO at Snipcart and former marketing lead at that same company. Snipcart is a developer-first e-commerce solution that is very much Jamstack friendly. Most of the products and the cart experience just lives in your front end, so it works with all of the new cool front end tools. Snipcart, for those who don't know, is a bootstrapped company. We started 7 years ago, and we've been bootstrapped from the beginning. We've been profitable for 4 years now, and when you launch a business today, at least in the tech space, there are mainly two paths that are offered to you in terms of what success can look like, what your growth model will be. And these are more often than not the bootstrap path, where you focus on lifestyle and profitability and that kind of stuff. And the other path is venture capital funded, right? Where you kind of focus on high growth, scalability, high valuations, and exits, that kind of stuff. So that's me. Hi, in Paris, when we could still drink some coffee in another country and travel. So I was doing an exercise, a positioning exercise for Snipcart with a designer, and we kind of realized really quickly that many of the e-commerce players in our space were heavily funded. And that kind of got me thinking, and it made me want to, let's go here. It made me want to look further into this, to see what the bootstrap landscape looked like inside bigger Jamstack ecosystem. So I started this little Google sheet, a very humble beginning of things, and just to see like what it looked like in terms of years of operations for different products and funding. And I kind of quickly realized that many of the players who go beyond the very hard pass of like 5 years, right? If you survive for more than 5 years, you've done more than like 90% or 99. I don't remember of businesses. So if you look at this and you ask yourself, like, many of the businesses that went past 5 years of operations are heavily funded. We're one of the only ones that's not. So I was like, I'm pretty sure like we're not geniuses. So other people can do that kind of stuff. And I think there are a lot of advantages and benefits of going the bootstrap route. So I wanted to share some of these to encourage some people to think about this and maybe try it for themselves. As you can see in the headless CMS space, well, first of all, it's kind of a younger space, as you can see by the years that are counted here. And you can also see that there's way more players who do not have funding. So that, I thought that was interesting. There's a more balanced equilibrium between funding and bootstrap in that space than in e-commerce, for instance. And the rest is just like a beginning, but I want to compile agencies that do Jamstack stuff, and I want to compile other tools also. So we can talk about this after the talk. Back to the prez here. So I want to say a word on venture capital. The first word I'm going to say is just that I'm not by any means an expert, but I talked with a lot of founders who raised money, and I talked with a lot of VCs who wanted to invest in Snipcart or had invested in similar products. And I think one of the first things to say is that VCs are not as evil as some bootstrappers may claim, right? It's not necessarily a good versus evil or bad versus good kind of thing. I just think that it's important to acknowledge that success when you're on the VC path looks radically different from the bootstrap path, right? It's profitability versus growth. Profits are not necessarily part of the equation in the VC route. So when you have a very wide adoption needed to succeed in your market, something more infrastructure or more horizontal. I think it makes a lot of sense to try to raise money to go grab all of that market, all of these market shares, and try to implement your new way of doing things across multiple industries, for instance. So Netlify could not have competed without VC money, for instance, to give a Jamstack example. All right, so Bootstrap and Jamstack. Why bring the two together? I think we've seen indie communities pop up a lot. Things like Startups for the Rest of Us, MicroConf, Indie Hackers, etc. And I think these communities clearly signal that some people don't want to build companies with the incentives and the pressure that comes with a VC model, and that's fine. I think VC is a roller coaster of emotions and intensity, and it's either, for founders, the success kind of looks like get acquired or go public. These are like the stellar cases that we can look up to. And for investors, the success is basically exiting around. And I feel like you kind of have people putting in money and thinking they already want to leave the company. So to me, that kind of feels a bit weird. Bootstrap and Jamstack, I think I want to bring them together because they have a shared ethos. I'll run through a few of them to give you an idea of what I mean. So one value that is common to both is independence. In Jamstack, you find it through things like freedom from monoliths, giants, incumbents, and tools with poor developer experience. In Bootstrap, independence, you'll find it in freedom from the corporate lifestyle, the 9 to 5, the boredom, the physical location of where you work. Another shared value is staying small. In Jamstack, you see it in the lack of a need for very big infrastructures and hefty installs and heavy downloads, that kind of stuff. And in Bootstrap, you see it more in terms of like, there's no need for tens of millions of revenues or tens of thousands of customers, no need for absurd spending on vanity marketing, that kind of stuff. Both worlds also share a price consciousness. So in Jamstack, you see it by the fact that you don't need to pay for a bunch of plugins. You don't have to pay necessarily for extravagant hosting and maintenance. You can rely on many free open source tools. And in Bootstrap, well, you got to heat. So spending wisely is kind of key here. The last, I think, value that is shared by both is performance sensibility. And it comes in different terms, but in Jamstack, you'll see a focus on some important user-centric metrics, like FCP, time to interactive, LCP, FID, CLS, and all the good page speed insights and lighthouse stuff, right? In Bootstrap, you'll see similar focus on metrics, but they'll be about business-centric metrics, like healthy metrics like profitability, churn rate, LTV, and then you'll have human-centric metrics too. So happiness, sleep, financial comfort, free time, family time, that kind of stuff. So the question is, like, how can you compete successfully as a bootstrapper in the Jamstack space? And I feel like through our 7 years of doing so at Snipcart, we kind of gathered some insights, but also some other very cool folks have done it. So I'm gonna run through a few strategies and just like tips for competing as a bootstrapper in the Jamstack space. The first one is taming long tails. So when you're going bootstrap, your economic incentives are very, very different from VC-funded companies. So they will need market shares, steep growth, PR attention, many acquisition channels, you name it. You, on the other end, as a bootstrapper, only need a small community and one sustainable acquisition channel and enough customers to break even, right? And to put some food on the table for you and your small team. Big players that are funded will often go towards big problems. They want to solve like very large problems. You don't have to do that as a bootstrapper to make it. So I'll give you an example. Shopify, in terms of e-commerce, they want to empower the whole world to sell online, right? That's very ambitious. While on the other hand, Snipcart only wants to help a few hundred developers build better e-commerce, and that's it. So there's kind of a different levels here. And in the same way, the pain that you're trying to solve with your product when you're bootstrapped, they can be very much, the scope of them can be smaller. You can niche down on the pains. It can be much more specific than bigger companies. So maybe just let's say accepting payments online as a whole, there's a lot of pains in that whole user flow, right? Well, as a bootstrapper, you can maybe try to solve one part of that process, and it'll make sense and sense. So there's an SEO parallel to be done regarding targeting long tail keywords. We can talk about it more in the discussion after. Another good tip is radical transparency. I think bootstrappers have the luxury of being able to bet on some things that are less accessible for VC-funded startups. So humility, proximity, embracing smallness in your brand, in your communications, and your support. It allows you to connect more personally with users. And it kind of echoes a point that I'm making over and over when I'm talking is the concept of not being the best, but the only. Like there's probably 99 e-commerce businesses, but just one like Snipcart. Like these nerds from Quebec City who speak English and French and who launched inside an agency in the beginning and are very close with developers. When you bundle the whole story together and you share it transparently, it kind of makes you the only. And I think that's something you can leverage in your marketing and your growth. All right, another tip I very much like, and you've probably heard, is to go audience first. So whether you're building a podcast, you're learning in public, writing a blog, a video, doing a video channel, you can, by helping people, teaching people, and sharing with them, you can build an audience. And once you have these people following you, you can sell a product. It de-risks the whole venture, right, for a bootstrapper. Another tip, agency launch. That's what we did actually at Snipcart. So the goal is just cushion the initial risk by launching inside an agency that's already making money and has resources inside. So what you can do that's cool is leverage a client case or a client need to build an MVP. We kind of did that with Snipcart too, way back in 2012 and 13, I think. So the fact that there's an existing corporate structure behind you lets you kind of move faster without doing all of the admin red tape. And if it's successful, your product initiative, you can easily like branch out and create a new product, new company, and everything. Yeah. Okay, this one is not like I'm not doing this one because I don't like to fight, but I think it's a very good strategy for many people. It's to pick a fight, right? If you're a fighter, you can choose a nemesis, and your nemesis could be legacy solutions, giants, competitors, and you just hammer on that differentiation that you have versus them. So one other imagery that's useful here is the David versus Goliath, right? You target a Goliath, you step into David's shoes, and you shoot your sling. So we've seen versions of this with like Basecamp versus Apple, for instance, where you can use the Goliath and the Nemesis's clout and traction and their known pains to fuel your own growth. Just to emphasize my point. Something that's also cool in the Jamstack Bootstrap space is the accessibility and the presence of open source. I think we see a lot of very cool projects that have open source components or that are completely open source. And by going open source first, what you can do is build software and community, grow it, then you can sell paid versions or support or related products to that same community or that same user base. Tailwind CSS has been doing this, for instance. And if you want to go another funding model, you can also invite people to sponsor you or give donations, that kind of stuff. I know GitHub has sponsors now, and there are some different models you can explore there. Going first, that's another tactic that is very much suited to the Jamstack space, because many tools, existing tools and frameworks, are not necessarily Jamstack ready yet or Jamstack friendly. So you can't go first by building Jamstack specific tools around or on top of another product, tool, framework, whatever. So you've seen this with Jungle.js for Svelte, Udemy for, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, for Webflow, Static for WordPress, and then you can, when a cool CMS goes headless and it was previously coupled, maybe you can build starters or tooling around this to help the Jamstack community. Last but not least is integrations. Many people in our space, especially with the API economy that's booming and all that, make the bet to integrate with very good third parties to strengthen their product and their growth. So you can focus on integrating on top of existing platforms that already have traction. You can make your feature that is, for a big platform, they have a lot of features. Your product can be one of them features and do it better than themselves. And then you can offload the acquisition to all of these existing marketplaces and audiences. And you see this a lot with headless CMSs. They'll have like a marketplace that's just filled with integrations with other tools, and it helps them with their feature set and their growth. Okay, so what I want to say is that you are not alone if you want to go the Bootstrap way in the Jamstack space. We're a few companies doing it, and I want to give 4 examples of successful Bootstrap companies that are in the Jamstack space. So first up is Snipcart. I think I've kind of already touched on what Snipcart is and does. We launched inside a web development agency. We're very transparent in our communications and our marketing. We keep a strong proximity with developers when we create content, when we collaborate on some webinars or on some starters and demos, that kind of stuff. And we're not so strong on the integration side, but we're working on it. And I don't want to talk about Snipcart too much, so let's move on. So these folks are very good, and they're building a great product. I talked to all of the founders most of the founders for these examples, by the way. So what does ethos CMS do? They leverage radical transparency. They do like product journey retrospectives. They have proximity with agency clients, because they actually also launched inside an agency back then called Lean Panda in Italy. And they're betting on integrations like massively. They have a very impressive marketplace of plugins and integrations. They're a 5-people team, and with a product that's comparable to other companies that are 100 and more people working on similar products. They have over 1,500 paid customers worldwide. They're profitable. They passed the 1 million ARR mark. And recently, Vercel chose Dado for Next.js Conf to power for the CMS behind the Conf site. So cool example. Another one, the contrast on this one is not great. I apologize, Fathom, guys. So you may know Paul Jarvis, who wrote Company of One, and Jack Ellis, who's a Laravel teacher and community member. They're a good example of building an audience first. For those who don't know them, they're a privacy-focused analytics tool that you can drop into most sites. And I don't think I said it, but Data was a headless CMS. So they Paul and Jack, it's a two-man team, which is kind of impressive. They also leverage radical transparency. They write a blog. They have a podcast called Above Board, if I recall correctly, and their support is very, very friendly and warm. I wrote with the folks, and they're real human talking to you. So that's great. And they also do the pick a fight tactic, right? Where their fight is privacy, the open web, and their nemesis in some ways is Google and these giants. So what these folks have done is they've built iteratively. So the more revenue they were making with Fathom, the more time they decided to spend in it. So they de-risked the whole thing. And I think that's very interesting. And they were very, very, very careful when considering which features to add, what the pricing should be, and how to manage their infrastructure, because they wanted to keep maintenance and management of the whole company costs as low as possible. As a quick win, they grew their gross revenue 580% this year alone. So cool company. There's statamic also. They're definitely embracing not the best, but the only inside their brand and positioning. Just go on their website and see like the artistic direction that they have. I think it's great. They leverage transparency also. They have a blog. They're on podcasts. They leverage open source first a lot. So the core product and side products are free and open source, but there are some paid versions and upsells and whatnot. They also did the going first strategy, where when they launched initially, flat file CMSs were not even a thing, right? So they kind of were pioneers in that regard. And today they kind of fit with the Jamstack because they offer a headless version of statamic. So yeah, all great tools. Listen, I'm saying a lot of stuff right now, and I have blog posts coming soon, so I'll link to it in the description when it's available. But I'm writing an article on this. I think it's worth a discussion, the Bootstrap Jamstack space. So hence the blog post. I already have some domain names saved and bought, so I'm kind of down to start a niche and small community. If some people are down, just reach out to me and we'll see what we can do and how we can help at Snipcart. And that's it for me. I guess it's time to talk about the Bootstrap Jamstack and VC models and whatnot. Thanks for listening. It's been a blast.